Hello and welcome to another episode of Tables, Athers and Chairs. This week's guest, it is the Queen of Queens, it is Visage.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Holding up, I'm good. Makeup is keeping me going at the moment, so.
Oh, we've got to do something, isn't it? It's a bit boring being cooped up indoors all the time. How long have you been a wrestling fan? Was it something that you watched as a kid growing up?
Yeah, so I started watching. Well, I actually originally started playing the video games whenever I'd visit my grandma, because my cousins. I had like a really big family, so most of my cousins are boys as well. So it was either wrestling or football. That was on
Right.
PlayStation 1 at the time. And that's how I kind of got into it, kind of just to like bond with my cousins. I'd play like the wrestling games, but I'd always pick Lita. So it'd be like the Undertaker versus Lita on like SmackDown 1, and I'd always lose. But that's kind of how I like originally got into it. And then when I found out that actually it was a game based off a real thing, and these people were real, that kind of took my interest even more. I remember watching a video of a Sunday Night Heat that they like had recorded, and Lita was actually on that Sunday Night Heat. It was her debut, the Essa Rios versus Gilbert match, and I loved it ever since. Since she did that moonsault off the top, hooked.
So apart from Lita, who were your other favourites growing up?
So yeah, Lita was my main one. That was the person that kind of got me into it, and the person that I followed mostly. That's kind of what got me into actually wrestling, because I'd only watched like her matches at first, and then through just having to wait for her to wrestle, I kind of got into the rest of the characters, I suppose. And the people that I absolutely loved watching, and from tapes that I'd seen, were Shawn Michaels, which I think is an obvious one. I think a lot of people like Shawn Michaels, and Ric Flair. I used to love Ric Flair. I still do, but I used to watch like a lot of his older matches, because as soon as YouTube was available and we could research and people were uploading matches, I went back and watched a load of like older Ric Flair matches when he was in his 40s, back in his prime. And it was always something that I thought, oh, I'd love to be a wrestler when I grew up, but I never really thought it was an option, because I didn't know about British, like the independent scene at that time either. I just thought it was like WWE, well, WWF at the time, WCW, that was it. And then I went down more of a logical, for me, route, which was theatre, because there's so many jobs in that, and it's such a safe, secure job. So I did a lot of theatre training. I went to drama school and everything, and then in the summer of my second year at drama school, I found out about like independent British wrestling, and found out there were schools. So when I went back home, so I was like, what, 20, 21, 20 at the time, I went to go to an open day actually at Slam, which is in Hensford, near where I'm living, like in the West Midlands. But the day that I went, it was closed because they were doing their summer camp runs.
Oh, nightmare.
I know. So I didn't start then, which was the original plan, just to go see if I liked it. And then I went back to finish university, did my final third year, and ended up moving to Nottingham for my partner, because he was still in university at the time. And then I saw a House of Pain advertisement, and it'd been a year between when I first went to the Slam school and seeing the House of Pain show in Nottingham. And yeah, after that show, I went and spoke to Styx about, trying to get into it. And he told me that he had a school literally around the corner from where I lived. And, that was 4 years ago. So the rest is, well, history, really.
I suppose it helped that, one, you had a history in theatre, because a lot of wrestling is, a performing art. And two, the fact that it was a local training school, that must have been massively helpful to you as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember the first class that I ever went to, I was managing a restaurant at the time. And I didn't really tell anyone that I was going to go to this class, because I was working in the evening. My first class was the 22nd of December. So, we were quite busy at the restaurant. It was leading up to Christmas. And I remember going to my first class and taking a bump for the very first time and knocking myself silly, and trying to do that shift during the night was awful. But the best feeling in the world. Like, as in, as soon as I took up bump or ran the ropes or did anything, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. And it kind of did help with the whole theatre background. Like, I've done theatre and dance since I was 3. So once I learned really, you know, how to bump, how to move around in the ring, and just the basics, it was kind of easy to pick up in a way, just because it was like learning choreography. And then the theatre side of it just came naturally, like the character. I think that was probably the strongest suit I'd always had from the very beginning. Was I knew a character. I knew how to portray something.
You mentioned your character. Where did you come up with the character Visage then?
So the Visage character was actually a character that I used to do at drama school. Like an element of that. So in one of our classes, like improvisation was one of our key modules during second year. We had to create a character on the spot, and I came up with this character. It didn't really have a name, but it was more like this like supermodel, really obnoxious, really confident, loved themselves kind of character that worked through the scene. And then we built on that character throughout the weeks and tried to add them into different improvisational aspects and different scenarios. And then when it came to one day putting on matches at the House of Pain training school, as part of, you know, your training development, when we got to advanced at Stix's school, we ended up putting matches together and working matches for like 3 or 4 minutes. And during those matches, I was kind of always just like, oh, you know, get to A to B to C to D, and that was it. Just that's all I focused on. Really trying to remember the matches. And then I remember a guy that was a trainee. His name's Stephen Harris, but he'd been doing it for a couple of years, and we were just talking about, like, you know, feedback wise, because he was one of the more advanced people in that class at that time. And he just said, you need to just, everything you're doing is fine, like fundamentally, but you need to just bring something else out of it now. When I was originally training, people that were in the advanced classes at that time were like Lucas Archer, Gabriel Kidd, Alex Gracie, Joseph Connors would come down every now and again and like help us out with things. And, you know, like those kind of characters, those wrestlers, had a lot more charisma and a character at shows. So I remember him just being like, on your next, you know, run through or match that you have, just bring a character. So I was like, oh, okay, we can do that. So naturally, I don't know, it just came out that the old character that I used to do in improvisation, and it kind of worked. And then that's kind of where the Visage character started. Especially, you know, when I first debuted for House of Pain, I was heel, so it kind of worked out an even more 100% version of that improvised character, and then ever since, it's kind of, I don't know, gone from that, you know, up your own arse, pompous character, and slowly brought more of myself in. And I think when that happened, a lot more bookings came from it, and it was more successful. Because, I mean, the best advice I've ever been given from Joe is always, you know, the best wrestlers are themselves just turned up by 1,000. And I think it is really true. But having that kind of character, the original version of Visage character, was a lot easier for myself to portray and hide the nerves at the beginning, because I was like, oh, well, it's not, you know, it's not Josh, it's this other person. And now kind of Visage and Josh have blended a bit more, so I think it's a lot better now. So I started training in December.
What year?
2015.
Okay.
So it'll be 5 years this year. I started training in December, the last week of like the 22nd December, and then by April I was managing on shows. So I used to have a tag team partner like at the very beginning, called Nathan Nix, and we were called Absolutely Fabulous. So that was, I started managing for about 2 months, and then June was when I had my first match.
So that's fairly quickly, to be honest.
Yeah, 6 months, which I was shocked by, because when you talk to people that are training, especially when like Joe and Gabe, the average, I assume, was like a year and a half. But I think, one, with it being a fun, like a development show, that's what Styx is called at that time, and still now, it's still an academy show. So the audience going are a lot of the time family and friends, so they kind of know it's not going to be like polished. Especially the show that I debuted on, because Styx has like various shows of different levels, and different audiences go to each. But I think with the theatre background and the dance background as well, it kind of, once I'd learned like sequences, move sets, how to make a match, how to call a match, it was kind of like, just go out there and get experience, because there's no other way of learning, really.
I think the first place that I saw you live was probably Southside. How did you enjoy working there?
Southside was a weird one. I mean, I loved the company, and I loved the people that ran it, and I enjoyed working with the people that I got to work with. But Southside I was always used really here and there, with Southside, and I understand it. I wasn't the most experienced at the time. Obviously, Ben had matches planned out in his head a couple of months in advance, or a few months in advance, is what I was always told anyway. And a lot of my spaces were kind of just, a lot of the times that I wrestled for, it was more, oh, I've got this space coming up in the next show. Can you fill it? Yeah, that's fine. So sometimes when I look back, it's like, I'm very appreciative of the fact that I was able to, meet some incredible people and get some great reps in. However, sometimes I don't know if I was ready at the very beginning, without that preparation. Does that make sense? When
Yeah,
it's like
totally.
a couple of days before, like, oh, I've got a multi-man. Please come in and help me. Okay, cool, I'll do it. You're thrown in there with like the likes of like Damien and Kip and Cara. And at the time, I was probably like just under a year in originally. Because my debut there was in Nottingham at Rushcliffe with Conk and Lucas.
The biggest place I imagine that you've worked is Defiant. Not necessarily from company size, obviously, not with us anymore, but just off the sheer amount of numbers, the views that they got on YouTube. Before this interview, I looked back and they had like on their channel old pay-per-views that had like over 200,000 views. I saw some of the matches, just individual matches with yourself, that had like over 10,000 views. What was it like to work for them?
It was crazy. So I used to drive Gabriel and Lucas and Gracie up. Once I used to go with Joe occasionally, but because obviously Joe could drive as well, they would share that travel. But then when Joe got signed for the initial UK tournament, they were looking for a driver. So I volunteered, because I think like that's obviously the best way to really get out there. So I would volunteer to drive those guys up. So I'd met like Dan and Pete, the guys that had run it, had run Defiant and did the story side of it before, but they'd never seen me wrestle. And I think Dan would probably admit, I think when he originally heard the character was, a 6'1" drag gimmick, I don't think he really thought of a place that I would fit in on the card, especially at that time, when like Cody was there and Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio, because at that time it was more, it was a lot bigger, and they'd have like the two Japanese nights and the Mexican Lucha Libre nights. So I don't think I would have fit in as well, and I think I would have got lost back at that time. But obviously I didn't see that. I was just like, no, I know as soon as you put me out there, like especially in Newcastle when their drag scene's so big, that it'll connect to the people. They took a little break, I believe, and then when they came back as Defiant, because that's when it was What Culture. They originally asked Kanji to come and work their female division, and they wanted Gabe back, but they were looking for a driver, and both recommended me. And then I think they were just trying to fill their card up for the first show. And Dan was like, well, bring your gear and we'll put you in like a put over like match for the Anti-Fun Police. And I was like, okay, I mean, that works for me. So I got there the very first day, and I kind of knew what my match was probably going to be like 4 minutes, like, 3-4 minutes. And like that first match was incredible. I think there was like 500 people there at the O2 Arena, which was, again, the biggest audience I'd worked really at the time. And as soon as the drags, I came out in like full makeup, full wig, did a wig reveal in literally 30 seconds that I had to like get over, and the audience loved it. Even watching it back, like the pop that I got for the wig reveal, I knew as soon as, if anyone had heard that backstage, that I was like, oh, I think I'll probably get like a return booking. And then as I walked backstage, Dan was like, oh, here's the next dates for the rest of the half of the year, I remember one time I literally drove up to Newcastle. I was the last one out before Pac, and I can't remember who Pac was wrestling at the time. I think it might have been Robbie. So I was 17th on an 18th match card. And I was given, I think my match with Damien was 2 minutes. But I mean, it was fun, and I got to work people one-on-one that I'd never worked before. And I learned a lot. So, I mean, I don't know, it got me a lot more bookings out of it, and it got me a lot more like traction on like social media, which obviously is important for promoters when they're looking at you. So
one thing I remember from Defiant was your tag team with Jack Sexsmith, the fantastically named Tuck Shop.
I love that.
Brilliant. How did you get on with Jack? Obviously, you two being the LGTBQ community, obviously, is Jack somebody that you looked up to in wrestling?
Yeah, so I'd watched Jack before with Progress, and I'd always loved watching him and thought it was great that he was bringing that kind of representation on one of the biggest companies in the UK, and still is. So yeah, I think I met Jack the first time maybe at a Progress show. I think I maybe drove Joe there, but it was really short. It was like a hello, whatever. And then I'd met him a few other times. And then when I went to a What Culture show, he was working there. Maybe I think he did 1 or 2 matches there originally in the WCPW days. And he said that he was going to maybe talk to Dan at the time about doing a tag team or having me as a manager. But, I didn't really think much of it. I was like, oh, that's nice to hear. But unless I get given a date, or until I'm there, I'm not really gonna believe it as much. And then when we at the Defiant show, the first time when the idea got brought to us, it was literally on the day I turned up. It was it was a pay-per-view that they were doing in Doncaster. I can't remember which one it was. Oh, the Magnificent 7 pay-per-view. And we did a TV taping before, and I remember literally getting there and they were like, oh, Jack's on the show. It's his debut for the Defiant Now brand. And we're going to put you together. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, amazing. And me and Jack had always messaged on social media saying how we wish that the idea had come forward originally, and how we just wanted to work together. And then Defiant really gave us that chance, and they kind of let everything up to us. Once they just said, oh, you and Jack are together, that was it. They just let us go wild with it. And yeah, the Tuck Shop came about, and I still think that is a great tag name.
It's fantastic. Absolutely genius.
Loved it.
Do you think there's enough representation of the LGTBQ plus community in wrestling as a whole? I mean, obviously, you look to America. Nyla Rose, first ever transgender champion at AEW. Also got Sonny Kiss at AEW as well. A few years ago, I think Darren Young came out on a TMZ interview. Over here, obviously, there's yourself. You did have Jack Sexsmith. Do you think that there's enough representation in the community in wrestling as a whole?
Well, I don't think there'll ever be enough. But looking at 4 years ago when I first originally started, there wasn't many people that I could look up to. And maybe that was ignorance on my half of not really knowing the scene. But apart from Pat Patterson, back in the day, there was no one, and he wasn't, at that time, he wasn't wrestling 4 years ago. And I don't think he was ever openly out during his, actual years of being active.
I think the only other wrestler I can remember coming out, and it wasn't even at the peak of his career, was Chris Kanyon.
Yeah, as well, and Orlando Jordan. But again, that was when he was in TNA. That we knew that he was a part of the community, and so there wasn't really that many people, and especially this end of the Atlantic as well. I hadn't really heard of anyone. And then, I don't know, all of a sudden, once I got more involved within the independent scene as well, and then, Jack's storyline came with Progress, and then Charlie Morgan as well. It became, I don't know, it just seemed to be all at once. All at once, there was just loads of us, which is amazing. And I think it's really, there's a guy on Twitter, I can't remember his name, but I'll have to share it at some point. He does, he's a wrestling fan in America, and he'll do, throughout Pride, he'll do a wrestler a day for the 30 days of June, a wrestler a day that is in the LGBT community across the globe. So that kind of really opened me up to more people as well. And ever since, I think it's kind of become a community of people supporting each other. I recently did a quiz with Grapplehead. Literally filmed it the other day. I think it comes out next week. And it was there was myself, Priscilla, Paro was on there as well, and it was more of an LGBT themed quiz as well. But I think especially with the bigger companies, like you said, like Nyla Rose, Sonny Kiss, Sonya Deville at the moment with her push on SmackDown, it is becoming more of a forefront. Jake Atlas on NXT as well, with his recent matches with the Cruiserweight division. I don't know, I think
Effie would have had his big gay brunch if it wasn't for this coronavirus thing.
I know, so. Yeah, and that would looked incredible as well with and then Viper as well recently came out, didn't she? And she's on NXT UK. So I don't know, it's just all of a sudden it seems that there's a lot more people open out there. And I don't know if that's because of the way the community has changed and the way people have see the community has changed as well. I think people are way more open, because that was one of the things when I originally started wrestling, or when I it was a dream of wrestling. It was always kind of I don't really know how it's going to be. Wrestling's very masculine, a very masculine male dominated sport. I don't know what it's if it's going to be a welcome thing. But then I've never heard anything, or nothing's been said to me backstage or at shows. So as far as I'm aware, everywhere's been pretty welcoming.
It's funny you say that, because whenever I mention that I like professional wrestling to any of my friends that don't like professional wrestling, I sometimes get the comment, "Oh, you like going watching semi-naked men play with each other on the floor, do you?" And I'm like, I've never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. Wrestling's very homoerotic. So I'm surprised that there's not been more openly gay wrestling fans. And wrestlers out there. I've always said that a wrestling show needs to do a show at Pride. I mean, I did one in Belfast for Respect. I did their Pride show last year, and that was fun. But I just think that there could be set a wrestling ring up outside on one of the Pride parades, and it'll be the loudest show you've probably ever heard.
Yeah. Shame that we won't be able to do it this year, but that's
I
not a
know.
bad idea whatsoever.
I know. Just imagine, I don't know, like bring out Kip Sabian at a gay pride and he'll sell loads of merch. It'll be
Most
great.
definitely. So have you faced any prejudice of fans or wrestlers alike?
Not really. I think my very, very first match, I had a girl, and she was literally like 11, and she was like, oh, she shouted like, you're gay or something. But I don't think it was more of like.
And you were like 10 out of 10 for observation.
I was like, well done, babe. But like straight away, like her mum like took her out of the audience. And you know, it's never happened since. And on the independents and bigger shows, everyone backstage has been very welcoming. Like from what I can see, I mean, no, I don't think anyone is openly going to come up to me and say anything. I mean, if they want to, they can try. But you know, nothing's been said to my face. So as far as I'm aware, it's been all right. But again, I've spoken to Priscilla, and he said that he's had a lot of stuff said to him. So I don't know. Maybe it's just when I was first training and when I was first going out to shows, I was with like Gabe and Joe a lot and Styx. So I don't know if people kind of like backed off just because of who I was with, because you know they're, especially on the British scene, they're very well respected, and those are the guys that were training me. So it's, I don't know if someone kind of gave me a free pass with being trained from them guys. I don't really know, but as far as I'm concerned and aware, I've not had anything said to me.
Before we go, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Social medias, perhaps, or big cartels, anything like that?
So it's at Visage Wrestler on all social medias. That's Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And then merch-wise, it's just been announced that me and TNT Extreme Wrestling have done a collaboration. And I think they're dropping by the end of this month, so end of June 2020. There'll be some t-shirts out there.
Fantastic. Well, all that's left to say is thank you very much for joining me today, Visage. And hopefully, someday soon, we'll get to see you strut your stuff in the ring again.
I know. Hopefully, I miss it so much. So much. There's only so much wrestling you can watch, really, without starting to get a little bit envious. So hopefully one day.
Take care. See you soon.
See you later.